I'm just so excited to have her here. And it's, wow, we have people from Berlin. This is great.
Yay. Hi, Rota. Yes, we met in Berlin last summer. That's exciting to see you. Yeah, so how should we get started, Alicia?
Well, we usually start by, let me give you some basic guidelines for the webinar to everybody, because not everybody has been with us before. So I mute all the participants, and you can unmute yourself here in the bottom. There is a, let me just put this here. Okay, you can unmute yourself here in the bottom. There's also a chat on the other side, and I just send a chat to everyone. So you can send a chat to everyone. You can also send a chat if you click on everyone tab. You can send a chat individually to a person, but if that person is either Donna or me, we might not be able to answer right away. But when we're open it for questions, that is a great place to be. I also shift the videos back and forth. So the people who are watching this recorded, they can get a great consumer experience, or a better consumer experience. So that's pretty much the housekeeping stuff. If you are in a very noisy environment and you're talking, I will mute yourself. Or if there's a lot of background noise, I would mute yourself. But feel free to raise your hand here in the chat and I will unmute you. Or if you want to talk, you can unmute yourself here on the other side of the screen. We usually ask you questions, and we have questions from people who cannot make it, because sometimes people can't be here live. But we wait a little bit to ask that at the end. So, but I want to start, Donna, with asking you, how did you get into where you are today? How did you get here?
Well, I'm a firm believer in serendipity, and I'm a firm believer in, signs that kind of flash at us, like, listen to me, good things are ahead. And I think, in today's age, it's funny because our heads are probably down our smartphones a lot of times, so we don't see those signs anymore. But I was lucky at a few junctions in my career to kind of see them. I always was an actress, but something in me knew that wasn't going to be enough. So I needed to find something that satisfied my act hunger as much as that. And I loved working with people. And when I was about 16, I discovered drama therapy. And I was like, oh my God, that's the perfect profession for me. And I knew that there was a master's program at NYU. And I did everything in order to meet the requirements from that. I was living in Israel at the time. I was a social worker in the Army. I did my bachelor's degree in sociology, anthropology, and theater. Like, everything was geared towards that. I got accepted, went to New York, and then discovered that the pay for drama therapists was about that of a starving artist. And I was like, okay, how can I take all of this great stuff and then bring it somewhere else? And I had this moment, one of those aha moments, with one of my professors who said she had a friend that traveled the globe and taught workshops. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. I didn't know what or how. But I sent my, I enrolled in like a continuing postmaster's program in organizational development and training, sent my resume out to the first place looking for corporate trainers, and got a job doing presentation skills and business training in Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies all over the globe. And then again came 2008, after I had traveled all over, been doing all this, and then boom, everything was kind of turned off. And I had another juncture in time. It was like, what am I going to do now? And I was introduced to a cardiothoracic surgeon who needed help with his public speaking. But he had also created 2 medical devices, right up your alley, Alicia. And he's like, can you do the investor decks? This was 2009. I had never worked with a startup before. But I was like, a story's a story. I know how to tell stories. I know how to create powerful presentations. Sure, why not? And I ended up accompanying him to an angel conference he had in New York with like 80 angel investors in the room. And I presented on his behalf. And the other companies that had been selected they got up to speak and my heart broke for them because they were just torn apart in the first minute. And I was like, how did they not hire someone like me to work with them on this? And then I started doing some checking, and there weren't a lot of people out there that were doing specifically storytelling for startups. It was starting to be a bit more understood. Storytelling didn't even exist then as anything beyond what you tell your kids at night. It wasn't a business term. It was something that we really coined in the early days, myself and some others, and now it's like all the buzz. So I'm like, okay, that's my new audience. I'm going to be doing this. And everybody's like, startups? No one's going to pay you to do work. And I'm like, we'll see. And I started off, doing a lot of pro bono work for accelerators and for pitch competitions. And it was sort of a service as sponsorship model, I called it. And I said, all you have to do is thank me and put my logo up. So people start to get my name. And lo and behold, they started to see these really good pitches. And they're like, who's behind this? And soon my schedule was filled. So that's the story.
Well, that's great, because I looked, I think I met you the first time a year ago or 2 years ago, but I heard of you before, and I've seen the progress, and it's absolutely amazing. And as I said in the invitation, this is a much needed work, because a good presentation is not going to make a good deal, but a bad presentation kills a good deal. Yeah. And I am so surprised that people would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars going through college, and then a lot of their time going to college, and a lot of their time trying to understand how to do a business plan deck, and they are not professional about it. The same thing is with funding. They find consultants, and they spend a lot of time on consultants, but they don't go and get training. And then they go and rely on their friends. And every time everybody asks me, can you help me with the pitch? And I say, no, to talk to Donna. She's an expert. So you go to the experts, and I can do a good job, but I cannot do a great job. And I believe in talent. So you just go and get with the pros. That's what you do professionally. So I'm so excited that you're here. And it's always so interesting to hear how people develop their careers. And of course, now I understand why you're so talented, because you came from a completely different background about storytelling and drama, and this is just fantastic.
Thank you.
But I'm sure people want to know about the secrets, and you promised me that you were going to do a little bit of training, and I think everybody's excited to see that. So I'll hand it off to you. And remember, for the rest of the audience, you can always put your questions here on the chat to everybody, and then we'll answer when the Q&A comes, when it comes time to Q&A.
Great. Okay, so I was trying to think what would be our best use of time. And I just want to go through, I'm just going to use my slides here, but I want to go through just a few of the points that I feel are the most relevant and important. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And of course, please feel free to stop me whenever you feel, that you need some.
I wouldn't dare to stop you.
Sorry? Okay, so no, please do. And then anybody else that does pop some questions in the chat, I'll check in with you from time to time. So I use a lot of references when I train on this to the dating world. And I met my husband when I was 34, so I was dating for way too many years, and it felt so much alike, the frustration of all of these dates and all of these meetings. Same thing with investors. And it's very hard not to take that frustration from the last date into the next meeting, but you have to treat it like it's brand new and it's fresh. Now, when I was in my 20s and living in New York, I did speed dating. I thought that would be an efficient way to meet people, and it was a nightmare because you have 5 minutes to speak to this person and really wow them, and that didn't really happen there. So 5 minutes can be a long time. If you only have a 5-minute pitch or a 10-minute pitch, or even if you have an hour, half an hour allotted with an investor, you want to grab their attention from the get-go. Now, in a 5-minute pitch situation, there's no way you're going to be able to tell your whole story. You have to kind of grab the essence of it. In a longer pitch, you need to apply some of the same guidelines, but really tell a story. Now, what do I mean by storytelling? I think, Alicia, that's a real misnomer for people. Does it mean just standing around telling jokes? Does it mean breaking the ice? No. There's two super important aspects of storytelling that I want people to really get. One is the structure of a story. So stories have a structure. Think back in ancient Greek stories, in Chekhov, Moliere, Shakespeare, even the Bible is a book of a collection of stories. And there's a structure to these stories. Something bad happens, then a hero emerges to solve that problem. And then there's the whole hero's journey and the plan of action, and then there's the outcome. And that is very, very much the way any kind of persuasion deck goes, whether it's an investor deck or a sales deck or anything around that. So we really want to get that story straight. Now I want to just say one thing. Mark Twain said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I don't want you to lie, but I do want you to tell the best story possible. Bless you. I don't ever want you fudging your numbers. That's a big, big no-no. So what do we do? How do we encapsulate that? So the first thing that we want to talk about is you want to introduce yourself and you want to give your vision statement, your North Star. But unless your team looks like this, there's really no need to start with the team. You want to talk about your why. And Simon Sinek does a beautiful job in his TED Talk about defining what the why is. It's not what you're doing now. It's not how you're doing it. That'll come later. It's why are you doing this? What will be different 5 years from now when you have built your company and you're starting to have a true impact on the industry? So think further. What is it that's really going to shift and what's really going to change? Investors want to hear that you're selling them a big vision. And then people say, and I get this from women most of all, yeah, but we're not there yet. Well, obviously you're not there yet. You're raising funding to get there.
That's
and
why
it's okay
you're here.
That's why you're here. You need the money
That's
to
why you're
get
here.
there. And it's not that you're lying and saying we've accomplished all this. This is where you're heading. Later, you're going to talk about your product and where you're at with it now. But you need to be able to show that this is going to be a big thing, big market, big vision, big execution. And starting off, if we think of it as a story, as a play with 3 or 4 acts, so the first act is going to be either making them feel the pain or see the light. So it's either going to be the carrot or the stick. You're either, you need to scare the audience a little bit that something terrible, it can happen, like cyber or infosec or anything that's, all these new things, anything in health, also health tech, which is, I know, your focus. So we have to understand the true impact that this is having on our lives, or the excitement of something new making our lives that much better. And that's where you can tell the founder's story. So that's another aspect of storytelling. It's bringing in your true story. And that's what set you on this crazy journey? What made you decide to do this? Did something happen to you or to someone that you love? Did something happen to the world at large and you were like, I can solve this. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to solve it. And tell us that story. Now, a lot of times people say, yeah, well, investors don't want to hear the story. So what do you think, Alicia, when people come in and start talking to you about the problem and telling it in the way of a story or not telling in the way of a story, how do you kind of like to hear it at the beginning of a pitch?
This is very interesting because I'm gonna give the investors a perception, and as an investor, it's very important for me to put the money where my heart and my mind are. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's truth for everybody. And I always say that funding is like any process, like any human process, is fundamentally an emotional process. So what you're doing when you're telling your story is you're aligning yourself with the investor. And if there's no, that's fine, you shouldn't continue. It's like getting married to you don't want that. And it has not a lot to do with the investor or with you. It has to do with the right fit. So when I hear you talk, the perception from the investor point of view is I need to understand how important this is for this person. So this person is going to have the resilience to carry through, and it's going to make the best decisions for the company, because this is not ego tripping. So that is why it's so important for me. So I can see, is this a person that I can work with? Is this a person, do I feel that pain? Do I see that line? Do I want to be involved with that? Do I want to call my friends? Do I want to be excited about this? And I don't invest in things that I'm not excited about.
I'm
And
so happy to hear you say that.
yeah, so that is, so what you're doing is not, you're not only showcasing yourself, you are empty people that are not aligned with your vision to self-select themselves out, and that is a great outcome.
That's fantastic. So I love hearing you say that, because I mean, that's my assumption, and having so many conversations with investors, if you're showcasing a bit of your soul in this part.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say investors are looking at three things, and you can, add if you align with this or not. So they're looking at credibility, likability, and momentum. How much do you know about your and do you have the team to execute? How likable are you? And that matters a lot, because you're going to be sitting in boardrooms together through the good, the bad, and the ugly. You want to know that this person is someone that's a mensch, that's someone you can work with. And momentum, how far have you gotten in proving this? So I think every slide needs to speak to one of those three, if not more. And in telling your story and in showing the passion, as Alicia said, you're showing that this is truly matters to you. You haven't just chosen something because this will be the next money maker.
Yeah, that money is a way to keep score, but it's not, is it icing on the cake? It's not the cake. But you do need to make money, and that's something that people get confused, because it's hard for investors to, we made our money. It's our money. We made our money. And I'll talk a little bit more about how people view investors in another event. But we are people too, and sometimes we're not appreciated for the effort that we do, and that's a turn up for me. But going back to your 3 points, I would change the likability for a perfect fit, because when you talk about being likable, it's kind of a judgment, and I'm a likable person, and I like people, and sometimes I like a lot of people, but I wouldn't invest in them, because my vision or my capacity to support them are not aligned. And sometimes it's very personal to me. For example, I didn't invest in Juul, in St. Hill Angels, where I'm a member. We were big investors in Juul, and the Juul, the vaping company, and they have PAX, which is a cannabis vaping. I don't smoke and I don't use cannabis, so, and I never have. I'm not a better person because of that. It's not my thing. And I chose not to invest in them. But the reason why many of my colleagues invested in them was that they were trying to find a way to make people quit smoking. And it turns out to be something different. But that aligned the vision of a lot of people. And a lot of people that invested in Juul at the early stage were people that either were smokers, had been smokers, or had children or family members that had been smokers. And that called their interest, that caught their interest. So instead of using likability, I would like to use a good fit.
Good fit. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, I use likability in the sense of you want to put all of your jerkiness outside the room. And I've seen it happen. People come in. Now, again, we're talking, to women get funded here. I see it less with women. I see a different problem with women, and I'm happy to address that in a second. But people come in very self-assured. They'll argue with investors. They're bringing in the frustration of the day, and that shows. You want to come in at your best. Showcase yourself at the best. Same, again, going back to the first date, you're not going to come with all your pissiness and your annoyance and grievances of the day, because nobody wants to hear that. There'll be time for that once you've fallen in love and the courtship is happening, to open up and show other facets of yourself. But I love the idea of the perfect fit. And that's something to remind yourself. When somebody says, I don't want to date you, or I don't want to invest in you, it has nothing to do with your worth and your value. Yeah. It just means it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to my acting career, if I, after each audition that I didn't get cast in New York, would think, oh my God, I'm a horrible actor, I never would have continued with it. It
Yeah.
just, I didn't meet the vision for what the director had in mind for it.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And eventually, when I got the parts, it was the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing here.
That's true. That's true. And, you know, if you are, I've been an entrepreneur too. And I, you know, I didn't have any money. So that's how I raised my money. And then I had great relationships with investors. But you get a lot of rejections. And, you know, rejections say, you say, okay, do I have to change something, or do I just need to continue the way I am? And it's up to you, because it's your baby, it's your business. That's the beauty of it. If not going to
it is. And it's so important to know, you know, when to continue and when to cut your losses too. If if you're hearing the same thing again and again and again, the same feedback. And by the way, I know my slides are off. I purposely did that because I don't want to distract from this discussion. Then you don't, you know, if you're hearing the same thing, you might want to think about it. It's not that getting no, it means you don't have a business. And, you know, if Thomas Edison had stopped at 9,999 tries, we wouldn't have light bulbs. But it's also about listening to the feedback that resonates with you. I mean, it drives me bananas. I will have clients, and I have one of those now, that we did their deck. And they came back, they said they got some feedback from a VC, and okay, we did another half hour kind of read. Now, again, they got feedback from someone else, and I'm like, listen, I'm happy to tweak the messages, but if you keep doing this after every meeting, you're going to drive yourself bananas, because everybody's going to tell you something else, and then it turns into what I call a patchwork pitch. And it's just layers upon layers of advice you've gotten, and then sometimes you just have to strip that away and go back to the core of your story.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important when you say that you start with why you're doing this. Because when I started the VC fund, I started Chile's first seed capital fund. It took me probably 2 years, and I spoke to over 1,000 people. And at the end, we started with 13. But I could see, if I could see a pattern, then I would, every interaction, I would go back and say, okay, I'm going to take these notes. And then I would say, well, do they resonate with what I want to do or not? And eventually, I got a much more polished model. And I was able to do something that nobody thought it was possible. I also thought it was possible. So that made a big change.
So here's another note, piggybacking off of that, Alicia. As women, we have a true gift of gut instinct. I've never been a man, so I can't speak to what their gut instinct is, but I think as mothers, as women who are able to give birth, we have this innate instinct that's there, and it's like a muscle. The more we trust it, the more we cultivate it, the more we listen to our gut and our body when something is saying yes or no, then the stronger it gets. So if you're in a meeting, it doesn't feel like a good match with the investor, go through it, thank them graciously, and move on. Don't ever take money from someone because you're desperate to take money, because it's never going to work out. And if you don't feel that it's a good fit. You remember, you're interviewing the investor as much as they're interviewing you. So trust your gut, listen to the advice, thank them for the advice, and then stick with what sticks, with what resonates, what feels true. There's a lot to be learned, but you can't throw away your business model every time you hear something new. Who are the people that really resonate and speak to you?
Yeah, well, and sometimes you just want to do something that is impossible. You know, it's like, I'm very stubborn. So I'm like, okay. But then there's, you know, if you're very stubborn, you need to make sure, like I was a single mom, so I needed to work and make sure that I had enough money. And I was living in countries where I didn't have any relatives and I didn't know anybody. So, or I had landed not knowing anybody. So, you know, you have to make sure you are responsible and you take care of your, what I call the production capital. You take care of your expenses. But sometimes you're like, no, just watch me. I'm going to do this, and you do the impossible. But people would come and work with you if they are, as I said, if they're aligned to your mission. If they're not, you don't want them. They're going to be like anchored. You don't need that.
Absolutely. I see that, by the way, I see that with clients too. I have If I've had conversations with people that want to hire me and it doesn't feel right to me and I don't feel that I'll be able to give my all, I won't take them on as a client because I don't want to be in a position that I feel like I'm not true to. I have to become a mercenary member of the team in order to tell their story from their position while looking at it from either the investor's position or the client's position. Like I need to be able to look at both sides, but I need to truly, in that moment, be as committed to the team as they are. That's my job.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not there to say, is the product going to work or no? I'm here to completely give my fully belief. And if I don't believe, or if it's something that's against my values, I most likely won't take it. Or something about the person is just not rubbing me in the right way.
Yeah.
So that's again, but that's something that you learn to listen to. So I think that's super important too. So yeah, the right fit.
Yeah.
So moving on, now that, okay, the second act of your presentation is your solution. And now you don't want to start with the solution because that's being a bad salesperson. Even if you only have a minute, if you don't engage them in that passion, problem, opportunity, you're missing a big part of it because that gives them a moment to resonate with your story, and stories resonate. They really do, because people can see themselves or somebody else they care about in that story, even if they're not a user. So a lot of times with female founders, we're working in like female oriented markets. And I saw this, I do work with Women's Startup Lab, and one of the women was talking about a personalized makeup that she's creating that'll be the exact shade, and it's based on AI and image recognition. Now, as women who wear makeup, I think we all know how much money we've wasted on bad shades. But the men sitting in the room, I had no clue what she was talking about. And she kind of had to go back and bring the men in, you know, and get them to understand what a big opportunity this was. Now, it doesn't mean they're not going to invest. They just need to see the opportunity and understand it. But then we get to our solution, and you need to create what I call the simple solution statement. It sounds simple, but it's not. That one sentence that explains what your startup does. And my formula for it is we do X for Y by Z. And we can flip the order of the Y, the X, and the Z around, but that's basically what the sentence has to encapsulate. Another way to look at it is the DRSC Founder Institute created like a startup Madlib, where you can kind of insert your words and help you to create your, my company is developing an offering for an audience to solve a problem with a secret sauce. Now, secret sauce is a great condiment. It's a nice addition to have. It's your unfair advantage. It's what sets you apart. It's your IP or somebody on your team or a discovery you've made or first mover advantage or whatever it is that really gives you that edge. And I want to talk about that a little bit later on as well. So have a sentence that I could wake you up in the middle of the night, ask you what your startup does, and you'd be able to tell it to me. That's simply that whether I have a degree in computer science or not, I'd get. And now I don't have a degree in computer science. So I know that when I understand and can explain simply what a client of mine startup does, anybody can. So I'm the benchmark for it. So that's to me about the solution, but more important, you need to, as fast as possible, show us what it looks like. I mean, Steve Jobs could have stood around there for an hour talking about the iPad, but the minute we see it, we're visual creatures. We need to see to believe. So if you have a product video, take the part that's demoing the product, not the whole problem, and walk us through it. Don't put the voiceover on. You walk us through it. Use screenshots, mock-ups. Let us understand the user journey of a first-time user. If it's a very technical and complex thing, do an actual use case of a client of yours or an as-if client of yours, and walk us through the steps. Like often I work on DevOps things, and people that aren't devs don't understand the pains that devs go through. So it's like you're opening a window into their world. And again, you're telling us their story and why this matters. And you walk us through like 4 or 5 different features, but you're showing it instead of just telling it, and that makes a world of difference. And by the way, if you have a client that's already using it, start off at the beginning, the opening, with their story. So client X was doing this and this, and they were struggling with that, and they were losing money, they were losing clients, they were losing this, or whatever their story was. And like them, there are many other companies out there. This is a $50 billion market, and it's just getting worse because A, B, C, and D. And then you talk about your solution, and then when you show us the demo, now show their after story after they started using. So let's go back to Client X. Client X is now using our product. Here's how they onboarded. Here's how they use it. Here's the dashboard. Here's what it's done for them. Here are the results after 2 months. And here's the loving testimonial of Client X. Oh my God, we love these people. This is the best thing ever. We're never going back. We're never going to stop using them. But stickiness is another thing investors are listening for. These clients that love you and are willing to pay for it and can't imagine their lives without you. And there's a few, by the way, there's a few technologies are in my life that are so embedded that I cannot imagine my life without them. So you want to become indispensable. So that's the important part of Act 2 of the solution. Alicia, I'd love for you to add anything to that.
I think this is great. A lot of people. Well, I'm in the phase of angel investing, and at Women Get Funded, and we have another program called Funding as a Process it's gender agnostic. But because I am in the early stages of investing as an angel, a lot of people come to us so we can start the process. And there's something called sweat equity, where you have to demonstrate that you've gone through some self-exploration. You don't need money to do that. You need intention and you need work. So I love it that you say that you have impressive demo. You don't have to have a finalized product, but show me what are you going to do. Give me a mock-up, give me drawings, and show me that you know the consumer journey. It doesn't matter if the consumer is a company or is a research institute or is a government institution, or is a child, or is a woman, or is a man, or is an older person, or is a hospital. I don't mind. Show me how you understand how you're going to transform the problem for the consumer into that solution that is going to wow them, and show me how you're going to do it. Just don't tell me, show me. That's really, really important.
Yeah. I think all humans need that showing, because it's not that they're dumb, but the largest part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for image processing. It's what we do all the time. We didn't have that part of our brain when human beings were human beings. It evolved over years, and the time it evolved is when we started seeing cave paintings. It's amazing. People suddenly were able to express themselves visually, and by the way, they were able to start recognizing their own tribe members and stop killing them because they didn't think some new person was coming to attack them. So
we still do that, unfortunately.
Right. It's actually the same part of interestingly enough, of impulse control. So a lot of times they'll find people that are sociopaths, psychopaths, or abusers that have had brain damage there. I don't see it as an excuse, but something has been damaged in their impulse control. Anyway, just a fun fact on the side. But yeah, we need to see this. We are human visual creatures. Show us. Don't just rattle off a list of features. Show me who's using this and how and why they love it.
There's another, when you're doing the planning. Yeah. When you're doing the planning and you show us, if you are doing the planning, you realize you have some gaps here that you need to take care of. So that is something you need to do before you come to investors. And also it's a matter of being professional, being prepared. It doesn't mean that you know every single step, but it means that you've taken a professional approach because you're expecting me to invest my money, which is not, it's limited, and my time, which is very limited, to help you and to build something together. But you need to start that. You don't need to come with ideas. And when I was teaching entrepreneurship, we used to value ideas. And we did this exercise for 3 hours, and we came out with tons of ideas, and we work a little bit more on that. And then we measure the value of everybody in the room of our time, and we came up with, and we value the ideas. And sometimes it was like $3, sometimes it's 25 cents, because we came up with 200 ideas and we developed them. So I said, this is exactly what an investor sees is, there's not value in the idea. You need to execute a little bit. You need to go a little bit farther down. Otherwise, you don't get funded, but also you can start damaging your reputation because you're not professional about that.
Yeah. Yeah. People always come to me and say, when is the right time to be seeking investment? And I always say to them, go as far as you possibly can go on your own. Whether it's an MVP, whether it's piloting, whether it's getting basic funding from friends and family if you can, cashing in on your own savings, which is always scary. But you want to show, like Alicia said, with the sweat equity, that you have something to show for it, even if it's an MVP, minimum viable product, even if it's a demo, even if it's something that shows that you're not just dreaming on an idea. People that get funded for ideas are usually serial entrepreneurs that already have an exit under their belt. And then, and
everybody can invest in them in the previous one. So that,
exactly. I worked with with Trip Actions, which is, they've catapulted very, very fast. And they had a previous exit. And while they were nearing the end of their acqui-hire, they had the idea for Trip Actions. And not acqui-hire, but when they had to put in 2 years to the company that acquired their previous company. It was definitely not an acqui-hire. They talked to one of their lead investors about the idea, and the lead investor's just like, count me in for $4 million. I'm there, because he knew their track record. So that's when you get funded on an idea, not when you just come up, unless your idea is so incredibly out there. But even then, you get an advisor on board, get something, get the traction. I heard a beautiful story yesterday. I was working with a client, and she was telling me the founder's story, and she said that she had another idea, and she came to her mentor at the time and told him about the idea, and he got so excited about it that he decided to come on as a co-founder. And this is somebody that was in the finance field for years and years, and somebody, so that was really great.
Yes. And I've been here since 2014, and I see a lot of people talking about, incredible rounds and all of that. And all I can talk is from experience. So I see around 500 to 600 deals a year. That's a lot. And I see it with a group, but I also see around 10 deals outside of the group per month. So I see a ton of deals. I have never seen a deal get funded without a demo and on the idea base. Even if you have an idea, show me the back of the envelope or something like that. You need to show me something. You need to do your work. Otherwise, I don't feel respected as an investor, and I don't just come back when you're more ready. But there's another thing to it. A lot of people are obsessed with getting funded by angel investors or VCs. That might not be the best funding option for you. That's why I did funding as a process, because everything you do in funding impacts the next round and the next round and the next round and the next round. And this is exactly like you started. This is not dating. This is getting married. You don't go and decide to get married the first date. And in the process, there's a lot of options. And in the process, you might need funds to do something in the demo, but somebody might give you that tool or my link that you need. And you can go ahead and use resources, and that I call that unfunded. So we talk about 30 plus ways of funding. Angel investing is one, venture capital is one. Don't focus just on that. And one of the things that I want to see
what other options would you suggest?
So for example, partnership is an option. Partnership is an option. Sponsorship is an option. Gifting is an option. Grant seeking is an option. Sweat equity is an option. Family and friends is an option. Partnering is an option. You can trade things. Leasing is an option. Factoring is an option. Organic funding is an option. Equity partners is an option. Recycling is an option. Credit cards is an option. Short-term loans is options. Line of credits are options. I mean, I'm just doing 18 at the moment. There's a lot of other options.
And by the way, the option that I think is the best
on a VC.
is sales. It's getting people to pay for the initial pilot. And that's another thing that I think with women, I see more than with men, is asking people to pay for the pilot.
That is a great option. And this is a program, this recording is for the Wealthy Institute as well. So we have men and women, but I've worked a lot with women because I have Women Get Funded for 4 years and because I'm a woman, but I never worked just with women before. But there's another thing that we forget. It's not only about women, it's about the perception of race, age, and sexual orientation, and the way we portray ourselves. So this is really interesting because if I'm part of a judge in a Muslim community in the Valley, they have their own, the perceptions about them. There's also the African Americans or the people who have darker colored skin, and there's a perception about them. And actually, nobody has any sympathy for a Black guy. And I get very frustrated about that because there's a lot of compassion and sympathy for a woman, but not for a Black guy. And they have a very rough time raising money as well. So what I feel in that sense is that you have to, and you started with a great suggestion, you have to overcome those boundaries inside of your head first, and you have to see every interaction like a fresh new interaction. New interaction. If you're a woman, you never know. There's another thing that's especially impacts women. If you're a woman and you are talking to an investor who's a guy, you're always have in the back of your mind, well, is this person going to make a pass at me or not? And this is so unfair because there's so many guys who are absolutely great, but this is like having thieves in your community. The very few that mess it up for the whole community. So that's something we need to work in our mind. The other thing that happens is that if you are a minority, people discount your value, and it creates a vicious circle. And that's why I started Women Get Funded, because you don't get paid the same, you get discounted. And it's not only if you're a woman. If you're a Black person, I'm not going to say African American because there's some Africans who are not Americans, and there's some dark people.
Yeah, also
we call them Black in Venezuela, so I'm just going to deal with. Or if you're brown, but if you are darker skin, if you look different, at least in Silicon Valley, and it's hard to look different because this is very, very diverse. But if you are sick, if you have a turban, I went out yesterday with an abaya, and I think I'm going to start because I used to be in Saudi Arabia and I visited. So I think I'm going to walk in an abaya and see the response of people. So if you go and present at a meeting and you look different, people intuitively think it's going to be harder for that person to close a sale at that value. And that is a real issue for the investor because that means that your cash flow needs to be stretched and you're going to need more money. It's not impossible, but that's an unconscious bias you need to figure out a way to overcome.
Wow. And so how does one do that? How do they?
You just need to say that. And I'm going to, this is your show, Donna, but I'm going to intervene here.
No, this is important.
So there is, I remember I was a single mom and I did my MBA, and I went to work in Switzerland and I came back, and one of my professors gave me a tip that nobody would dare to give me. And he said, you're going to have a hard time finding a job because you're a single mom, and people cannot ask you that. So you need to figure out how you're going to go and convince them that you are a respectful, professional person, and you're going to be professional about your business. So it is, and he said something that really empowered me. He said, this is not the other person's job to solve the problem. You need to figure out to tell them that before they ask that question, because they're going to think about it. And one thing, and eventually I want to do a talk with just investors, but this is hard one for us because we want to be cool, we want to be nice people, and there's a lot of pressure against us. But one thing that I want to do is, what are the things that you don't dare to tell an entrepreneur that they need to know? And one of them is, if you are a woman, one of them is, what are you going to do if you get pregnant? What are you going to do if you get married and your husband moves?
So would a man be asked that? Would a man be asked that? Like, how are you going to?
And a woman would not ask that either, because it's inappropriate. We don't ask that. It's personal. But like, I was mentoring somebody yesterday. She has child, and I said, oh, when are you going to have the other one? And then I said, oh, so I'm Latina. And she's like, no, I'm Indian, don't worry. But it was an inappropriate comment. But as I mentioned, investing is a human process. It's emotional. We want to know those things. So the trick is to think, these are the things that are in the back of my mind, might be something that would prevent somebody from trusting me and thinking that I'm worthy. How do I deal with that? Like you said, women usually don't demand to be paid the same amount of a guy. I'm a speaker, and I decided this year I do not speak for free. I get asked that all the time, and I said, no, you need to pay me, because you wouldn't ask a guy to do that, and you need to pay me the amount of money that I am valued at. Now, that creates a lot of resentment in other people. And the same thing happens with you. When I suggest your service, she would help me. No, of course not. She's a professional. Why would she help you? She's a professional. Treat her like a professional. And this is a change of narrative that we need to have, not only with women, but with minorities in general. And you know who has the worst? The Latino women. Latino women are paid 43 cents on a dollar for the same job, and they're constantly discounted. And that is why they're creating more companies than any other group in the US. So at some stage, we just need to keep working on that and showing up. And like you said, when you have a person come in and says, I have a paid demo, that is very impressive, because it means you convince somebody. So
let me take that 1 second. What Alicia just said is so important. I think investors appreciate how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to close a deal.
Yeah.
To get an investment, to get some kind of an accolade of sorts. So if you have a significant traction, significant growth, a deal you've closed, don't wait till slide 16 to say it.
Yes.
Bring it on the first slide. So first of all, round A, if you're raising Series A, you must start with, I call it the brag slide. You have to put your biggest wins up front, because investors listen differently when they see that you've achieved this. But even as a seed or a pre-seed startup, if you've closed a deal with someone significant, you want to tell them that up front.
Yes.
Because it's like, wow, this person's been hustling.
Yes.
Man, woman, or otherwise. It's important to own that.
Yes.
And I see it with men too, but I mainly see it with women. And they're like, well, it's not modest. I'm like, bleep modesty. Seriously, you're not here to be prim and proper like we might have been told that society wants us to be. You are here to own your achievements.
Exactly.
So, so the next slide here would basically be, how far along are you? So it would come, if you don't have a lot of achievements and you're in beta and everything, you can wait to do it till after you show the product. But if you have something big, by all means, put it up front.
I love that slide, because you're not down there.
It's a journey.
You're like sweating up there.
Yeah. You don't, look, he or she are up in the sky, but we don't know how far they still have to go. It's a journey.
Yes.
It's part of it. So this would be moving us into Act 3, which is the hero's plan of attack, the action, the business. So there's 3 main things that really need to shine through in an investor deck, especially like a 5-minute pitch opportunity. Differentiation, what truly sets you apart. I have, by the way, on my website, donnagriffit.com, under resources, I've got a lot of great insights onto it. I wrote a whole section on talking about your competition and how important it is and how you show it visually. You need to understand what your true edge is. I hope it's needless to say you never say anything bad about your competitors, because you don't know who's sitting in the room, especially if you're in Silicon Valley, that might have been involved in that company to some capacity. Or an investor in it, or a board member, or a mentor, or whatever. You never want to ever say anything bad, because when you say something negative in Silicon Valley, that's it. Like, they look at you like, oh, okay. Because it's like, I once sat with an investor who said to me, it's not about saying yes, it's about looking for reasons for saying no. He says, we see so many great companies that it's going to be the smallest things that might lead us to say no, the little red flags. He said, somebody looks at their phone in the middle of a meeting, that's it for me.
Yes.
And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, because we need to have something to say no to. So
But I'm gonna piggyback on that. You just reminded me of a funny story somebody told me recently. It's like going to the first date, telling them how horrible your previous partner was, or how horrible, your friend's partner is. It's like,
exactly.
you know what
Or how much men suck, or how much, or how many kids you want to have when you get married. That's another.
Yeah.
no-no
So
on the
this is
first
the
date.
differentiation, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. You don't talk
Yeah.
badly about the competition. You
No,
talk about
you never
how
do.
you're different. Yeah.
Look, you know what? I even stopped myself yesterday. A client wrote me and said, hey, do you know Investor X from this fund? I was just introduced. What do you think? Now, I don't like that investor very much because of something he did to another client of mine. And at first I wrote, personally, I don't like him, but whatever. And then I erased it. And I said, I've heard great things about the fund. I'm curious to hear what you have to say. You have to be so careful. You have to be so careful
Yes.
to not badmouth anyone, because you never know how it come back to bite you. So you really have to be mindful of your tone, your negativity or positivity. Now, in Silicon Valley, what's crazy is everything is great, amazing, awesome, cool, we're totally going to do this. And like you walk out of a meeting thinking, oh my God, that's it, the check's on the way to the bank. And then you might never hear from that person again.
Yes.
Now, it's not that they didn't.
That happens everywhere in the world.
Yeah, well, it's even more prevalent because New York, it'll be like, thank you, that was interesting. In Israel, it'll be like, y'all suck, because they'll tell it to you straight. But it's important to understand that if you don't hear back from them, it doesn't mean, again, that they weren't interested. It's just there's a lot of others. It's like Tinder. Well, there's a whole other list that you've swiped, what is it, right or left or right on?
Thanks for saying that, because I always tell people, unless I tell you not write to me anymore, keep writing to me, because sometimes, like yesterday, today, it was 10 p.m. and I'm like, oh, I haven't looked at my emails the whole day, but I want to go to sleep. And I got up early and I responded to some emails, but there's a long list because people want to act. Yeah.
Yep. And you know what? When I do follow-ups for after I've sent proposals, I do, I think 4 follow-ups. And my final follow-up is something like one last ping before I let this email fall into the oblivion of my inbox. I really hope to connect. Usually that'll elicit a response. And then sometimes people will be like, we're not ready right now, the ping, and I'll continue pinging once a month. And I've closed clients after the initial year, because you never know. And I have Boomerang, which just brings it up whenever I say it does. I love Boomerang, but you just never know until somebody says, no, I'm not interested, stop bugging me. Then now with investors, you can put them on your update list once a month or once a quarter. You should be sending out a what's new with us. Now, when you have a significant milestone and suddenly they see it, you might get this email, hey, how you doing? Oh my gosh, we haven't spoken for so long. We should totally catch up. And then you have to play the game and say, oh, it's so great to hear from you. Not, oh, now I hear from you? Now, after all this time, no, you don't want to do that. It'll scare the person off. You gotta keep the ego in check and think of it as you're playing chess. What's your next move? Be smart, not right. Okay.
That is good. That's good. And also, as I mentioned, funding is a process. So I had 4 meetings yesterday, and all with entrepreneurs, and actually 2 were mentoring. But people get focused on funding as if funding was one event, and it's not one event. It's a connection of events. So everything that you do has to be placed in the funding process. It's like having a child or having any relationship with any human being. It is connected. You continue having the conversation even if you didn't invest. And just focusing on getting one check, it's like focusing on having one client, one sale instead of having a client, or having, a meaningful connection. That is really important. Yeah. And what you said about keeping people informed is really important. I don't want to get informed every month because it's overwhelming for me.
Okay, so once a quarter, or when there's a significant thing to tell. Not, hey, we just wrote another line of code. Yippee.
Yeah, that's right. But even if you have an update, a brief update on a quarter, and like if I need to read it, if I would like to read everything, and if you want my attention, it has to be
headline.
Yeah.
Headline, the big headline. Use your subject line as a headline. Think of it as a newspaper article. That's what's going to grab people's attention. I used to teach business writing as well, and that's one of the things we really worked on. If people don't take advantage of the subject, and you usually do reply, and it's like the same word. Change your subject heading to really grab someone's attention. It's the first thing they see.
Okay.
So differentiation is one thing. Monetization. How are you making money? How do you plan to make money? What is your main revenue stream, and what will be some additional revenue streams? But we're not doing that yet. It will be in the future. Borrow from the future. You're looking at these different things. So yes, you have your main model, and yes, whether it's a subscription or whether it's rev share. Freemium is not a revenue model. Freemium is a way to, people sometimes say it's a freemium model. The yum is the monetization model. That's the premium services or the subscription or after the basic tier, what it is that you're doing. But it's perfectly legit to give a free trial or a free basic kind of version of it, but you need to show what they will be charged for and why they're going to want to convert to being a paying client. Going back to Boomerang for a second, they were the first service I ever became a paying client for because I got addicted to the fact that I had all these follow-ups coming back up through my mail. This was before Gmail did their, remind you of this email kind of, and for me, once you've done 10, then you have to become a paying client. It's like $70 a year. And it was the first time I made a decision to become a subscriber. And I said, you know what? It is such a huge ROI. Major ROI. So you want to get people so addicted to what you're doing that when they hit the paywall, they have no choice but to come on board.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And the third thing, and this to me, and I'm giving you my biggest trade secret here, and this is the silver bullet. I don't know if you guys can see the titles because it's under, the Zoom is kind of blocking it. This is the silver bullet, the opportunization. I know that's not a real word, but it rhymes with differentiation and monetization. But it's not just enough to show that this market is huge. Of course, you need to show that it's a big market, and you need to understand how to show the TAM, SAM, SOM, and are you going bottom up, top down, and all that. But there's something else here. Why now? Investors suffer from something called FOMO. That's written underneath there, FOMO, fear of missing out. Nobody wants to be the investor that saw Airbnb and passed on their round A when they were raising $500,000 at 1.5 million valuation. This is a true story, by the way. There was a Medium post from their founders a couple years ago, and they put out 7 rejection letters. They, of course, erased the names of why they were being turned down, just to say, hey guys, keep your chin up, founders, because this still can happen. But there's always, you have to create a sense of urgency. If people like Alicia are seeing hundreds of deals a week and several a day, you need to show them why this is urgency. And it might be several things. One might be something happening in the markets. Gartner says that 2020 will be the year where ecosystems and communities must be created for corporate entities. This is something that my client yesterday found, and that has a huge impact because that's what they're doing already, and they have a proven track record doing that. Or it might be a regulatory or a legislative change. GDPR, which came out last May 2018, nobody knew what the heck it was. And it was like pending for a long time. And there's another one coming out in California this year, the Info 2020 or whatever it's called. So it's that you have to have a cookie. We use cookies, opt in, opt out. You just have to let people know what's going on with their information. So I worked with a client about 3 years ago that was doing a GDPR solution. Nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody understood what they were saying. But the minute they were able to say, and it was getting a little closer to the time, that there will be major fines for corporations and for financial organizations that don't have a solution in place for it, all of a sudden red lights were going off and everybody was scrambling, and that was it. And this is a company that's been acquired since. So you need to show what is happening. Is there a law that's changing? Is there a market research? Or another great signal, and this might sound counterintuitive, has a competitor of yours just received a major round of funding or been acquired? That's a tremendous signal to show that there's interest in the market. Just because they were acquired or got a big major investment doesn't mean you're not going to. Investors go by signals. Somebody else has invested. Oh, maybe we should consider this. They've been acquired by so-and-so. Wow, maybe so-and-so's biggest competitor wants to acquire you. So,
or you can do a partnership. Or you can do a partnership. But that's what you're absolutely right. New wave foods, for example.
So I love to find at least 3 major trends that show that you're at a juncture of time that this is really meaningful. And that to me is really what sets a deck apart, that you understand why this time is coming.
This is great. This is really great. And so many people forget this. This is great. Yeah. I always ask, when do you close the round? And what makes you close the round? Because that's the other thing that I tell people. Although I didn't use it when I was raising my money because I had no options. I said, I'm going to continue raising. But I ask people, it is very wise to say, this round is open from this month to this month, and then you close it. And then you do whatever it is with the amount of money that you were able to raise. And then you continue going. That's what I think it's useful. But but I mean, your point is so valuable, and so many people forget that. Yeah.
And I don't know if they forget it or they don't even know that this is a viable option, because it's such an aha moment. And it's such an important part of the deck. And looking at the opportunities, I'm working with an amazing company now that they're a flying autonomous car. Yes.
Oh, good.
You heard that. And one of the things they're looking at now is the rejuvenation of the automotive industry. The automotive industry is dying in its previous form, and it needs to be a phoenix. And what they're doing is going to create so many opportunities for the big players in the auto industry that need a new line of business, that need a new purpose in life. So it's not saying we're competing with them and we're putting them in their graves. We need them in order to get this vision off the ground. So it's really very much about showing this massive opportunity. And believe me, this is an incredible, it's a husband and wife team. They already have an exit, and yet they get scoffed at by investors because this sounds so far-fetched. But they're going to find that one investor that looks at this and says, this is an incredible opportunity. It's totally crazy. It's totally bonkers, but I want to be a part of this.
We'll send them my way because I've invested in autonomous vehicles. So,
all right. Well, autonomous flying, I will.
But the interesting thing is that also and I leave that through my companies, the companies that I started as a CEO. Sometimes you're doing this, and there's another competitor of yours that discovered this opportunity, and you are the perfect partner. That's a way to fund it. So you're the perfect partner. So, for example,
make sure you protect yourself. But make sure you protect yourself. That's important to say if you're approaching a competitor. If
you have your investors, go with your investors. That's part of the good thing about having investors. And and I also have another thing. If you're poor, nobody cares about you. The minute you have $1, everybody feels entitled to a cent. But you can go with your investors. But one of the things that happened to us that was really cool was that we said, okay, wait a second. They opened this opportunity there. They don't have the capacity to do this. So we went and talked to them and I said, hey, can we partner on that? And then you get the lawyers involved. But it's just opening the communication to partner is really, really important. One of the participants of the program here, partnership is a way of funding. She took that approach and she went and approached her largest competitor. She's in India. The largest competitor is in the UK. They struck a deal. They're partners now. So the competitor is selling her, she's like Airbnb for ecotourism. So her competitor in the UK is selling the whole Indian platform around the world. And she doesn't need to, or they don't need now to raise the money to create that platform. So
I love that. If you can avoid having to raise funding, and I have a few clients that have been profitable from day one, and they're huge companies now, and I couldn't be happier for them, because I know that when they either are acquired or go public, the founders keep that money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my husband has a startup now, and we're trying to get as far as we can before we go out and raise. He's been doing this since he was 19, and he knows, you know, the pitfalls of it. And you're always at that point of like, okay, major deal came in, we need more people. Do we raise now, or do we wait a little bit more until? But if you can get as far as you can, and I don't want you to get to the point where you're on minus in your bank account and you're desperate, because investors can sense that sense of desperation too. You don't want to get yourself to the point of you're about to choke.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But if you can keep going a little bit longer until you've achieved revenue stream, until you've achieved growth, until you've achieved engagement, until you've achieved any of these major KPIs that you can prove that you're really doing this, you're going to have so much more leverage.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love to hear you speak that, because you have so much experience, and it's what I say, you know, talk to the experts, talk to the professionals, because you would make so many mistakes if you don't. And this is an example. So just don't go and raise money because you feel it's important to have, oh, I raised so much money, or I raised this or that. No, it doesn't work that way.
If you raised 100K for a 10%, that's not, you know, a huge achievement. You've given away 10% of your company. I mean, it's almost better to take a loan that you know that you're going to return and make a monthly payment, rather than have given away 10% of your company.
Yeah,
we saw
a company recently. They were amazing kids, young kids, and they raised 1 million for 40% of the company, and then 2 years later they raised 2 million for 40% of the company again. So I'm looking and I'm like, wait. So I'm doing the numbers. I said, how much money do you have how much percentage do you have? And their view was, we don't really care. We just want to have a company and do the process because we're going to do it later. But there was so much potential. And we as a team, we got together and said, you know, we need to get together, help them out, but we need to go and reevaluate.
Reevaluate and reshuffle the cap table.
And that's something that a good investor would help you do. That's something my investors did with me as well. They came back and they helped me structure cap, because I didn't know how to do that. So
and I've seen companies fall because an investor came in to try to help reshuffle the cap table, and the old investors would not budge on a few percentage points, and the companies had to close. It sucks. So, but you really, again, experts, it's not just me as a pitch expert, you need good financial and legal guidance to make sure that when you are signing a term sheet, you're not signing your soul over to the devil. Yes. And you're structuring your cap table in a fashion that will serve you in the future. There's so many clauses and things, and you could just end up, you know, and so, you know, it's worth either doing. A lot of law offices will do a deferred thing for you, or accountancies, if they really believe in you, and see if you can get that done. I wish I could do more deferred work, but I mean, I'm a one-person show and I'm not, you know, working.
No, and it's going back to our conversation before, this is something you need to pay for.
Yeah.
So if you are an employee, you have a lot of things paid for you. But if you're an entrepreneur, you need to pay for the things. Otherwise, you can't run a company. It's a professional thing. And it is valuable for so many things. Earlier this year, I had a talk with a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur in Australia. And we were laughing. He is a very, very successful entrepreneur. We were laughing because he said, oh, I didn't make money on my companies. And I'm like, how did you make money then? And he said, oh, I had a horse that went into racing. What? I had a company, and he's a program engineer. I had a company, I was doing software. And then my family always liked horses. And I talked to an uncle, and I talked to somebody else. And this is something that ticked with me. And he said, and then I realized I was not being professional about it. So I decided to go and hire the best horse trainer in Australia, who's a woman. She told me the name, I don't remember. She's in Melbourne, and said, I went to visit her, and I said, what do I need? And she said, this is what you need. And this is how you need to pay me too. He went back, raised the money, got a horse, got her to train the horse, and they won the race. They won the Melbourne Cup twice. So he said, that's how I made them. And we were laughing because he said, it's like anything in life. you need to be professional about it. And then he said, hey, I use that money then to continue to fund my companies. And now he has an incubator and all of that. But
here's a really interesting point coming out of what you're saying in funding. So for example, going back to the flying mobile car, it's going to be several years before the regulations pass that will enable this to happen. Shorter possibly than actual autonomous driving cars, because they're having all kinds of problems with their AI. But they have created one of the components that will, it's called sense and avoid, and it'll keep small aircrafts from crashing into each other, enabling them to be much smarter and have peripheral view. So they're starting with that. That's going to be commercially released next year, and they're partnered with NASA on it. So they'll be making money off of one piece of the solution as you get there. So if you have one part of your solution that you can start selling and making money on your way to the big vision, that's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, that is.
So, and you know what, by the way, they might eventually get acquired just for that, because it's a huge piece of the aviation market. Even if the flying car doesn't come to fruition right away, this is going to be a huge driver. And then you can show that market and then the market for your bigger vision as well. So you understand just this market alone is going to be making us XXX billion, million, whatever dollars.
Yeah. That is correct. And then you might have it for drones. I mean, it might spin out, you don't know. But yeah, but that is part of having the demo and having gone through the process of how do we monetize, how do we make money? Because at the end, you know, if I'm an investor, I donate money too, and I don't expect to see that money. But if I'm an investor, I want to see that money back. And I lose money in some of the ventures that I invest. So I want to see that money back so I can live off that. I live on my investment. I'm a real investor. Not a wannabe. I used to be a wannabe, but now I'm a real one. But I also want to make money on those companies so I can invest in other companies. That's the virtuous circle. And I want more investors to be successful so they can come back and be an angel investor, because I think that's the coolest profession that anybody can ever have.
There's two more things I want to cover, then I feel like we should open it up to questions. I know we're live on Facebook. I don't know if people, I'm not looking there, so I don't know if people are asking us questions, but two more points I want to make, and then maybe Alicia wants to add something. So just to kind of review the structure that we talked about. Act 1, the need, the problem, the opportunity, the challenge. Act 2, how you're solving that, the demo, the overview of it. Act 3, the business, how you're going to make it happen, the money, the financials, and for the vision for the future, much bigger than what it is now, your future milestones, your future products, what your funding requirements are now, what's your round objective, what are you going to do with this money, and how far will it take you? And finally, I like to end with a slide that I call key investment merits, which is sort of a summary of maybe the 6 most powerful points that you made in your presentation, so that even when they're asking you questions at the end, it's up there and it's reminding them of, you know, the 6 most powerful things. So that is the structure. I'm happy. I will make these slides available to anyone who saw this that would like them. You can write myself or write Alicia. I just want to, okay. I'm just skipping here because we're short on time. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff here. Okay, questions, Q&A, and this is something, Alicia, I'd really love to hear from you on. When I think a lot of people prepare for the pitch beautifully, but don't prepare well enough to answer difficult questions. And it's just as important. So the way I build presentations, a lot of the investor questions are already baked in. The answers are already there, so they don't have to be sit there wondering. However, it's legit. They're going to have questions. And oftentimes investors will ask you challenging questions just to see how you respond. Not necessarily wanting the answer, but something that'll push your button so they can see how you respond in a line of fire. And that's where it's really important to do it. So I created also on my website under resources, I call it the ultimate list of all investor questions you should be able to answer. There's like 100+ questions there, and they're categorized.
Can you send the link to?
I will send it to you.
Okay.
I'll put it here also. So just under, if you go to donnagriffit.com. Sorry. I'll send it to you later on, and make sure you get that. Go back.
Okay. Can you stop the live? Are you done with the presentation?
No. Just one more thing. Just want to say this.
Okay.
So choose the questions you think you might be asked. choose the questions you dread to be asked, and choose the questions that, like, you've answered before, and write out answers to these.
Yes.
And on your way to the presentation, review the answers to your questions too. Be ready. And if they ask you a question you don't know, what do you think? Is it legit to say, you know what, great question, I don't have all the information in front of me, can I get back to you with that answer? Will you penalize somebody for not answering on the spot? Then you have a reason to continue the conversation, right?
Yes. Okay. But I have to have a caveat to that. Yes. If I ask,
skipping over a bunch of stuff.
Oh, that's great. That's Donna's website. Yeah, and it's on the invitation as well. But yeah, so I have that there. Great.
So add a caveat, yes.
So if I'm asking you, how do you plan to monetize? And you tell me, I haven't got to that point. You just lost me completely.
I'm talking about esoteric questions, not the basic ones that need to be answered.
No, I understand that, but I have to stress that point because that's one thing that kills credibility. You say, we plan to make money this way. You and your team and your friends and yourself need to go back several times and figure out how you're going to make money on this. And you continue to improve that. But you have to tell them, how do you plan to make money? And investors know that most likely it would change. But you need to respect our money. If you are raising money from an investor, you need to respect your money. Now, if you're raising money from a sponsor, you need to respect their return on equity is an image, but you also need to do that. So that is one thing that a lot of people forget. There's so many incredible opportunities to do unfunding. Unfunding is making funding disappear, that they completely forget about the many ways that you can get resources and not dilute yourself. But you need to understand for each one of those sources, what is the return on their investment? And then you need to give that return to them. So when I was in Chile, the second year that we had the fund, the government came to us and they wanted to say that they had Capital Semilla, which is seed capital in Spanish. And I had the trademark and all of that. I had a meeting with my team and I said, we're going to give away the trademark because this is so important for the country. We don't want to be the only one. We want to be the best one. So we released that and we talked to the government, and then the government gave us $500,000, which 23 years ago was a lot of money. And we decided we're going to put this money in these companies. And we're going to take a small percentage to manage the relationship with the government, which was expensive. But we made sure that in every single presentation we had, we thanked the government because we wanted to give them a return on their investment. They didn't ask for that, but we gave it to them. And that creates a very healthy way of viewing the funding process, because every single person that gives to you would like to receive something in return.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't have my watch in front of me, so I don't know, phone. So I don't know how long we have left, but I would love to, there's some questions that our participants have asked along the way, and I think they're more for you. Well,
let's start with these two questions that we have, but can you stop
let me stop the share.
The share.
Okay, so Gabby is asking, I'd love to hear your thoughts on financial projections in a deck and a pitch. I was asked recently how we could be $1 billion company. Do we explicitly tell how we could reach this in detail? I always find projections in deck wishful thinking and fiction. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, Alicia.
Why do I have to say something about it?
I can give my opinion, but I think that you are the one listening to the pitches at the end. So what do you expect to hear when it comes to tell me how you could be $1 billion company? I mean, is it like, okay, oh, the wind's blowing this way, we're going to do that?
No, it's never that way. Thank you for that. It's never that way. You have to be able to answer that question if that question gets asked. And actually that is one of the times where you should have done your homework and not come back and say, we'll get back to you. That is one of the examples that you need to do that. The best way to build $1 billion company is to go in stages. So you say, with this round, we're going to go from A to B, and then we're going to go from B to C. That's why we have series A, series B, series C, series D. So you remember Donna explained to you that you have to have the long-term vision. So you need to have that long-term vision, but you remember that she told you, you need to tell them where you are at the moment. So you say, okay, at the moment we're here, and this is how we see ourselves in the future. You're not raising money for the unicorn. You're raising money for the next stage. So you need
For
to
the Shetland pony right now, right?
yeah. So you are going up the cliff, and you're not going to the top. You're going to the next step. The next step is the important one. I used to tell my students, you're not working towards graduation. You need to finish the next exam. You need to pass all the courses this semester. So you need to chop it in actionable items, in manageable pieces. So you do have the projections that you have to have that are very, very clear, are the projections for this round. You're going to make money with this round, and these are milestones that you're going to reach with this round, and this projection that you're going. So that's how you do that. You don't say, well, in 10 years you might be dead. I might be dead because I'm older, but I'm closer. But you don't say that way. What are your points, Donna?
So I think it's important to show that this product has the potential of hitting $1 billion, because if you were to be able to service every, if we took the entire global market and 10% of that global market or 5% of that global market were to be using your product, and you can say we could achieve $1 billion if we got there, great. It's showing that the potential is there to be $1 billion company. How are we going to get there? Exactly like Alicia said, the first step is going to be to capture the big cities in the US. So we're going to be targeting New York, Chicago, LA, and Boston, starting on the East Coast, making our way west. Looking at our projections up till year 2, we anticipate to be at $2 million ARR this year, and then $10 million ARR next year. You need to be able to show that you're growing as you're expanding. And then how will you be expanding both in, horizontally and vertically?
Yes.
So that you have it worked out, you have your go-to-market, and but you know that there is a big enough market that if you could tap into that and become the gold standard, then you would be a multi-billion-dollar company. That doesn't mean you're going to achieve it tomorrow or with this round of funding.
No, nobody expects that. Nobody expects that. But you need to see that you're building the market or you're growing the market, and the market is big enough. That is what the question was, the meta message was. Why do you think your market is going to be big enough? And sometimes you say, well, we learned this in this market, and then you say we're going to translate this to this market. Like the example that Donna was saying about autonomous car, flying car. You might say, well, we're going to do it here, but we might sell it to the aviation or to the drones or to, like I have a friend who created this button here, and they sold it to Apple. They sold the whole company to Apple, but that's not what they had intended. But they realized that, instead of using these, they had a better opportunity with Apple. So it really depends, but you need to have that vision, and you, like Donna said, is the next step. It's not, well, in 10 years, we're going to do that. Who knows where you're going to go in 10 days.
Even 5 years is kind of far off. 3 years, I think, is a good enough solid projection to see where you're going to be with your ARR. So I hope that was helpful, Gabby. Then we have a question from Iona. How much detail to share with an investor about your IP? Chances when you pitch the investor will actually get your secret sauce and give it to a competition. This is interesting because I get asked to sign NDAs all the time, and I have no problem signing it because I kind of feel like I'm almost like a lawyer at that level of privacy, but investors are not going to sign NDAs.
We can't sign NDAs. We can't. It is impossible for us because we see so many deals, and we just can't. I don't sign NDAs. I can't do that. Yeah. But this is a very interesting question. How much do you share depends on how much they ask you to share. So for example, if you have a patent, I want to see the patent number. And I am the person that goes in and sees the patent, and I go in there. But some people don't do that. I rely on friends for specifics on special patents, but sometimes you just protect it with trade secrets. So if your intellectual property is really, really important, You just have to say, we protect it with trade secrets, and you wait until you do the due diligence to go deep into that, if that is a requirement. Sometimes it's not a requirement. The other thing that we do a lot is show me that you have a client that used this and is happy, and we'll talk to the client, because we're very respectful of that. But the other thing is, like I talk to a lot of people, you pick your investors. Don't pick stupid people, and don't pick investors who've never invested before, because I lost money and I know how to be supportive losing money, and I don't like to lose money, but that's part of the rules of the game. And people have lost money with me. Well, actually,
another
no.
thing, you shouldn't be pitching investors that are invested in your direct competitors.
But sometimes you don't know that.
You look at their portfolio.
Yeah.
Try to find out as much as you can, because if it's a VC, they'll have their portfolio on their website. If you could go to Crunchbase, also look at your direct competitors, see who their investors are. It's public knowledge usually, and try not to talk to their. Or you can, kind of ask at the beginning, have you invested in this realm before the meeting? I think it's a legitimate question to ask.
Yes, but just to make another comment here, investors most likely are not in the business of starting a company. That's too hard for us. We already did that. We don't want to do that. It's too hard for us. We want to support other people that go and can't sleep at night. We sleep at night, and that's what we enjoy doing. And it is very unlikely that an investor would go out of their way to give your secret sauce to the competition. What is more likely to happen is that I'm talking to somebody else, and they say, well, I'm doing this, and then I said, oh, that's not the way it works. That is more likely to happen than purposely going out to ruin your company. What is it about?
And it's happened. I have heard horror stories.
I have time for that. I have value. I have time to create. Well, I'm very.
But it's not the norm. It's not the norm. It's not the norm. I think with investors, you just have to trust. Don't share too much. Don't bring your inner schematic.
If they don't ask you, don't share it.
Yeah. Broad strokes. Okay, and finally, we have a question from Rosa, and he says tips on structuring a pitch deck with the sent out. So let's talk about the send out deck, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, Alicia, as well. But this is my take on it. Usually, when I work with a client, first we create the presented deck, and then we will choose about 8 to 10 slides of the most, powerful things that need to be mentioned. Now, I like the slides to be very clean, crisp, visual, with minimal text, but when you're sending it out, you can add a text box on. So I always script out what the founder should be saying on the slides, and then so I'll take pieces of the script and we'll put it up on so that it is a standalone and it says a little bit more. So you want the core story there, the problem, the solution, the competition, how you're making money, your achievements, your ask, your team. That's pretty much what you want to be there. You can have a link to a demo if you want them to look at a film, but you want to leave something for the meeting. You want to intrigue them enough that they want to call you in. That's my take on it. Alicia, what about you? What do you want to see when somebody sends you something?
It's such a pleasure to see a professional talk about these things, because you nailed it. It's just so cool. So how do you structure a pitch deck? Just follow Donna's suggestion. I mean, it's just she got it nailed. The only thing that I would remind people, because she said that, if you send a pitch, is to open a conversation. I don't make the decision to invest lightly. I'm not that rich, and I've never met anybody who does that. Those people who don't want to make the decisions, they invest in venture capital funds, and then the managers of venture capital funds are responsible for that, so they also are careful. So nobody's going to decide to invest in you based on a pitch. They're going to decide if they're willing to spend their time talking to you. So it's an invitation to a talk. Yeah. And just, if you want to structure it, go to Donna's. She's the best. I mean, and she's earned it. And pay her too.
Thank you.
Because she has earned that. So Just go. And this is the type of question that we try to answer in these things. Be professional about your funding process. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but be professional. You get really prepared to go for a job interview. Do the same for having a company in a way that is professionally run. Yeah.
So I think we are at the end of our time. Alicia, thank you so much for having me. Wow.
It was such a pleasure. Yeah. I really enjoy these things. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope we answer all the questions. We have other questions, but we'll probably answer in another. And
anybody that wants to ask me anything, feel free to reach out through my website, donnagriffit.com. If there's anything I can answer, also look at the resources. There's a lot of answers already there. And I also have a video course, which Alicia has endorsed. She's there on the page.
I took the video course because I wanted to make sure that I understood. I don't endorse everything that I see, and it's pretty good. So yeah. Thank you so much, Donna. You have the last words as usual.
Really, just if you feel this fire in your belly of this passion that this is going to work, don't let anybody put that fire out. Listen, take in, guide, but be true to your story. Be true to what got this started. Don't lose touch with that.
That is so beautiful. I got goosebumps. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Donna, it was just a delightful pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Go and make the change that you want.
Amen.
Thank you.
Bye.